If you think power always wears a suit, think again, because sometimes it hides in the arms of a mother cradling her baby, and when injustice strikes, the world flips upside down in ways no one ever sees coming. Before I unfold this jaw-dropping story of a nurse who dared to slap a black mom holding her newborn, only to find her entire life destroyed just 10 minutes later when that same mom fired the entire hospital staff with a single order, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because stories like this one, full of shocking twists, hidden power, and justice served cold, are the ones you won't want to miss, and subscribing ensures you're always first to hear the most mind-blowing tales that leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about people, privilege, and fate. It was supposed to be an ordinary day inside St. Margaret's Medical Center, a hospital known for its pristine hallways, polished floors, and a staff that boasted about their professionalism, but beneath the surface, the cracks of arrogance and hidden prejudice had been widening for years, waiting for a moment that would expose them all. And that moment arrived when a young black mother named Aaliyah Johnson walked in, exhausted yet glowing with the fresh warmth of having just delivered her first child, clutching her baby tightly against her chest, her eyes shining with tears of both pain and joy as she tried to steady her breathing in the aftermath of labor, whispering soft promises into her baby's ear that she would protect him from the cruelness of the world, little knowing that within minutes, the cruelty would strike not from the outside streets but from the very people paid to preserve life and dignity. Aaliyah had always been underestimated. Her plain clothes, her gentle tone, and her tired expression often made strangers assume she was powerless, perhaps even struggling, yet none of them knew the truth of her bloodline, her connections, her fortune, and her authority, secrets she carried not to flaunt but to shield herself from false friends and vultures, and on this day, dressed like any other ordinary woman, her power was invisible, and the nurse who walked into her room carried no idea that she was seconds away from triggering her own destruction. The nurse, a stern-faced woman named Rebecca, had a reputation among colleagues for her impatience with patients who didn't fit her narrow definition of worthy, a pattern others whispered about but never challenged, and as she stormed into Aaliyah's recovery room with sharp footsteps echoing against the sterile tile, her eyes narrowed at the sight of the young black mother still holding her baby against her chest instead of laying him in the clear hospital bassinet provided. "I told you, the baby belongs in the crib, not in your arms," Rebecca snapped, her voice dripping with disdain rather than care, her hands moving as though she intended to snatch the baby herself. Aaliyah, startled, tightened her hold on her child and whispered softly, "Please, he's calm with me, just give me a moment, I'm his mother, I know what he needs." But instead of respecting her, Rebecca's frustration boiled over. She muttered something under her breath about people like you never following rules, and, in a shocking move that froze the air in the room, she raised her hand and delivered a sharp slap across Aaliyah's cheek, the sound cracking louder than any monitor beeping, the baby instantly bursting into panicked cries, and the world itself seemed to stop spinning as silence drowned the corridor outside. Aaliyah's hand went to her face, her eyes wide with disbelief, the sting burning her skin, but more than pain, it was the humiliation, the audacity, that cut deeper, and Rebecca, realizing too late what she had just done, tried to mask her shock by barking orders about compliance, but Aaliyah said nothing, not yet, because she knew her silence was far more powerful than an outburst, and within her calm exterior, the storm of retribution had already begun to brew. Within moments, the attending physician walked in, sensing the tension, but Rebecca quickly fabricated a story, claiming the patient was uncooperative, and that disciplinary measures might be necessary, not realizing she had just signed her own professional death sentence. Aaliyah gently rocked her crying baby, whispering reassurances, her eyes narrowing with a quiet steeliness that Rebecca completely misread as weakness, and then Aaliyah asked the doctor one simple question, "Do you know who I am?" The room fell silent, the doctor blinking, Rebecca scoffing, but before either could respond, Aaliyah reached into her purse on the chair beside her bed, pulled out a sleek black phone, and dialed a number, her voice calm yet commanding, "It's time. Execute the order. Clear the floor." Within minutes, chaos erupted. Not the chaos of panic, but the chaos of swift authority as men and women in tailored suits and hospital administration badges swarmed the ward, moving with precision like soldiers following direct orders. Nurses and doctors who had just been laughing at the nurses' gossip in the break room were suddenly being summoned into the hallway, their faces paling as they saw the director of the hospital board herself walking beside the team, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom, heading straight toward Aaliyah's room. Rebecca's mouth fell open as she saw the director embrace Aaliyah warmly, addressing her not as a patient but as Madam Johnson, and whispers shot through the staff like electricity. This wasn't just any patient. This was the daughter of the largest private investor in the hospital, a woman whose family practically owned the building they worked in, and with one signature, she held the power to make or break every career in that hallway. The director's face turned ashen as Aaliyah calmly explained what had just happened, every word delivered with the precision of a lawyer presenting evidence, her tone unwavering even as her cheeks still glowed red from the slap. 10 minutes, Aaliyah said, glancing at the clock on the wall. That's all it takes for me to decide whether this hospital deserves its staff or whether it needs cleansing. And as her phone buzzed with messages of confirmation from board members already looped in, she stood, cradling her baby in one arm, and addressed the stunned crowd outside her door. This woman laid her hands on me, a mother holding her newborn, and the rest of you turned a blind eye to her reputation of cruelty. You think silence absolves you, but silence is complicity, and I will not allow this place to be a breeding ground of arrogance and hate. Rebecca stammered, begging, insisting it was a misunderstanding, but Aaliyah's gaze was unflinching, and with a single nod, the director announced the words that made jaws drop. Effective immediately, the entire staff of this ward is terminated pending investigation. Security, escort them out. Screams of protest filled the air, doctors insisting they had nothing to do with it, nurses pleading that they weren't in the room, but Aaliyah raised her hand and silenced them all. I was underestimated today because of my skin, my tiredness, my quiet. And that was your mistake. If you treat me this way, imagine how you treat those with no power, no voice. This ends now. The scene spiraled into a storm of firings, escorts, paperwork being ripped from clipboards, and Rebecca collapsing in disbelief as she realized she hadn't just lost her job. She had triggered a purge of an entire staff, her slap echoing not just on Aaliyah's cheek but on every career tied to that corridor. And as Aaliyah walked slowly down the hallway with her baby in her arms, the entire hospital seemed to bow in silence, the once arrogant faces now masks of fear, and every patient who had ever felt unseen whispered to one another that justice, at last, had found its way through these sterile halls. What none of them knew, however, was that this was only the beginning of Aaliyah's silent revolution, for her power stretched beyond this hospital, and the story of the nurse's slap would ripple across the medical world, forcing institutions everywhere to reckon with the simple, undeniable truth. Never underestimate a mother holding her child, because in her arms lies not weakness but the fiercest kind of strength, the kind that can topple empires and rebuild them in the name of justice.